Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Lilith. With Lilith, there's always that one inkling feeling that whenever you play as her, you just feel sluggish, you feel slow, you feel like you can't really hit your tears. And of course, that is just because she is slow and she does use the familiar to shoot, which means that all of those things do become incredibly harder to actually pull off. But one thing about her that I really like is that she does have this unique ability to kill bosses very efficiently. Just because you do have your box of friends, you will usually, at least early on, use it mostly against bosses. You will rarely use it against single rooms, just because having two shots is not that beneficial to just having one. And of course, there's an argument saying that essentially it doubles your damage, and that's what I say sometimes too. But just because of how familiars work, because they stack one against each other, against small enemies, it's actually not that beneficial because they are not shooting at the same target. They're actually shooting, one is shooting just a bit in front of the other one, which means that most of the times if you're in a room with small enemies like flies maybe, only one of them will end up hitting the fly, so your damage is not really doubled. So for that reason, it's much more beneficial to use it in large rooms where there are more enemies, so that means that the both shots have a higher chance to hit, and of course against bosses, just because they are bigger targets, meaning that two shots can actually hit them at the same time. But with that said, even though she does have some nice boss clearing abilities, she doesn't really have any good room clearing abilities, and obviously that's just outside the fact that you don't start with any items that give you any AoE. So the fact that we got Toxic Shock in our first item room is very, very helpful to her. What Toxic Shock does, in my opinion, it's one of the best early game items, because what it does is not only does it deal damage to every enemy in the room as soon as you enter it, based on the damage you have, which is not really that substantial, but the important part is that you weak them down so that you can kill them in one or two shots. But what it also does is whenever you kill an enemy, they leave a green puddle on the floor which damages other enemies. So that's very useful against the annoying enemies that you have to fight as, especially as Lilith. Whenever you're fighting spiders, for example, which split into more spiders, those spiders then but they do have a lot of HP and they move erratically, and just because it's much harder to aim, those enemies can take just a very, very long time. So the fact that when you enter a room, they're already damaged and you can only shoot them twice, and then when you kill that spider, they leave a green puddle on the floor, and the spiders they spawn die immediately because of that green puddle, is a very great thing indeed, just because it does allow Lilith to actually have some room clearing capabilities. And I think that Toxic Shock is just better overall on characters. Well, I think it's a good item overall, but I think it's best on characters that do have a way to kill bosses more efficiently. So someone like Judas, maybe Lilith, I would say. I can't think of any of the rest right now, but those two are in my mind as one of the best boss killers, just because of their active items. So the fact that you have Toxic Shock, which synergizes well with those characters, is a very useful thing indeed, just because we are reducing the health of our enemies by a certain percentage every time we enter a room, and most often actually we can kill them in one or two shots, and that's obviously very useful whenever you're playing as a slow character, just because you do have those achievements or those rushes to get to. Thankfully, what happened in this run so far is, besides the fact that we got some the Toxic Shock and some speed ups, we also got a damage up. Cricket's Head is one of the items that works well, not only because it does give you damage, but also it does synergize with Toxic Shock. Like I said before, the more damage we have, the more damage Toxic Shock does. So we never really feel behind. So any damage up at this point is actually kind of quadrupled, or maybe not quadrupled, but it is not doubled, but multiplied by the amount of enemies there are in the room. So for that reason, any damage up is very useful. So it's much more important for us to get damage than to actually get tear rate, which is not something that I usually say, just because I don't feel it's true, but in this case it certainly holds that we had more benefits out of having higher damage and just shooting faster. We also managed to get a few Answers runes, which were very helpful, at least on this floor and on the previous one, just because we have a lot of cards, which does give us map exploration, and whenever we can see the map, then we can kind of optimize our path through the levels in order to visit them as efficiently as possible, meaning that we can visit most rooms before we get to the boss fight, and then when we get to the boss fight, we have a higher chance of maybe having a Purple rune, or maybe the cracked dice, which then allows us to maybe reroll the Devil Deal. And of course, if we just do the boss trap room or the boss room first, we just get a Devil Deal, and maybe it has bad items in it, we just end up not picking them up, we go out back into the floor, and when that happens, we actually maybe find the Purple rune later, and then we can't use it to go back to the Devil Deal. So I think it's very important to realize that it's important to explore, or maybe explore as much of the floor as possible before you go to the boss room, just because it does give you a lot of benefits. And thankfully what happened in this situation is that just because we were running a bit low on time, I think I didn't manage to explore just absolutely everything. But we did get to the double Peep fight, which is just horrendous. I've never seen such an annoying room before. I hate the Peep as a boss, but having two of them at the same time in a relatively small room, I do not condone of that. I think the Peep should die in a fiery hell. But besides that, we did get Guppy transformation. Thankfully, the Devil Deal did contain 2 Guppy items, and I did get 1 Guppy item before. So that allowed us to become, thankfully, just strong enough to be able to beat Boss Rush and still be able to catch Hush in time. Because that's usually the biggest problem whenever you're on dailies, is how the hell are you gonna finagle the time it takes you to beat Boss Rush and get to Hush at the same time. Because if you don't have a strong run, or maybe if you don't have a good way of killing bosses or just dealing a lot of damage to single target enemies, what ends up happening is you're just gonna starve or maybe be there for the 7 minutes, and while your room clearing capabilities via maybe Toxic Shock are very good, having 3 or 4 minutes to just go through floors is just not enough, sadly. And especially on the Womb 1 and the Utero floors, there are so many enemies which just hide and are invisible. Like in this floor we face Skolex, and the Skolex fight with this combination that they have, I think it took over a minute, and just because he doesn't have any targetable spots, or when he does, it's very hard to aim. And the fact I managed to pick up Tiny Planet, which is again one of the most ridiculous things I've done in my memory as of lately. I don't know why I torture myself this way, but at the same time, I'm trying to have just a little bit of fun. But yeah, I did pick up Tiny Planet in the boss rush, which, as you see, is not turning out too best, at least not against this fight. Thankfully, there are some situations that Tiny Planet does come in useful, and that's whenever you really don't want to aim. And I was feeling like that today, and I just didn't feel like aiming. And for that reason, of course, I did say that I want to have as high damage as possible, so that a lot of flies can spawn, and then flies deal more damage, and the Toxic Shock deals more damage. So in this case, damage up is very important, and I saw Dark Judas, which is just the optimal thing, because Dark Judas, what it does give you just an immense amount of damage when you die and respawn as Dark Judas. But what happened is I also had the cat's body, the guppy's body, what's it called? Doesn't matter, the 9 lives item, basically. What happens is, I pick it up, I kill myself 9 times, somehow I dodge this, alright? So, just imagine that scenario. I pick up the 9 lives after I picked up Dark Judas, which means, first of all, I had to kill myself 9 times in order to trigger my Dark Judas transformation. And you might be asking yourself, okay, why didn't you just, pick up only Dark Judas and not pick up Guppies or 9 lives? And my thinking was, maybe if I pick up Dark Judas, kill myself, and then pick up 9 lives, then in that situation I would have 9 lives, obviously, so if I died it wouldn't be too much of a problem because I respawn with very little health. But, with how things worked out, it was just kind of an awkward situation, just because I picked up 9 lives, and then I had to kill myself 9 times, and I only had 1 red health because I spawned inside of the curse room, which was a mistake. I should have just went to the spikes, killed myself, and then I would respawn outside of the curse room. So that was a bit of a blunder on my part, just because I thought I had 1 more life remaining, and I ended up respawning as Dark Judas. So that was kind of fortunate. Of course, somehow I managed to dodge that shot. I don't know if that's infamy procced or if that was just extreme luck on my part, but it really did feel like I was on the borders of collision boxes, and I don't know how I survived that shot. And I managed to beat the whole floor with only 1 black heart remaining. And then it was a decision to be made, right? Do we get to Hush, or do we go forward and maybe just finish the run at that point? And I was like, you don't live a little until you maybe risk a little. And I decided to go Hush, and I did have a Yera rune, which I hoped that I would get a Spirit Heart so then I could duplicate, because I think I can do Hush reliably in maybe about 3 hits if I have a semi-strong run. So I did get, and I duplicated. Thankfully, there was a Spirit Heart in the shop. I did duplicate it. I did get 3 Spirit Hearts, and there was Bunt Cake in the treasure room. In the treasure room, the Bunt Cake, you might be thinking, that's just suicide, because with Tiny Planet, you can't control your tears. There are explosive tears which can damage you, and when they damage you, you're just gonna end up dying. Well, thankfully, because we do have the Tiny Planet synergy, the shots don't actually explode until they hit the floor. And the fact that they stay in the air so long, it's just a very good chance that they will hit the enemy and not have that explosive effect. And when they do hit the enemy, we'll probably be far enough so that the damage of the explosion won't affect us. But what's more important is that it has a chance to have the Serpent's Kiss effect. And the Serpent's Kiss effect gives you a poison, which if it kills an enemy, it gives you a chance of dropping a black heart. And I was kind of banking on that. And thankfully, I did get one black heart in that fight. And like I said, he did hit me 3 times, which means that I was at 3 spirit hearts, got one black heart, which means I had 4 full hearts, and then I got hit 3 times, which means I was with 1 heart remaining when I actually entered the cathedral. And thankfully, the first room of the cathedral gave me a spirit heart, which made me just feel a lot safer, and we did manage to finish the run in the 24th place, which was just absolutely maniacal. I've never had such a fun run in a very long time. It was so full of risk, it was just full of luck, but it was also full of a lot of very good play. And thankfully our damage penalty isn't too high, even though I thought it would be much higher. There was apparently a way to break this game via finding a blank card, but I'm so satisfied with the score. I think this has to go down as one of my favorite runs in recent existence, or maybe just one of my favorite dailies in general, just because of how crazy it was, and I really like how it turned out. So yeah, 24th rank, again, a very good score. If you discount the cheaters, that's probably like top 10 again. And the fact that I do this just a bit more earlier than usual is a good indication that maybe we'll down rank a bit, but still I'm very satisfied with how this run went. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I hope to see you next time, and thank you for watching.